Hey there, everybody. Welcome, 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 welcome. I'm so happy that you are here. Who needs love in business anyway? It's the name of our topic this morning. And I want to bring in my, as you probably guessed from the opener there, I want to bring in my fabulous producer and co-host of the morning, Rich Bontrager. Hello, Rich. Welcome.
Hello. This is a bonus 2 p.m. with Trigger, I guess. Sorry about that. It was the wrong button, but you know what? We're on. We're rocking. Good morning.
We'll go with that. It's all good. Hey, those of you that don't know, Rich is the CEO and founder of Rock the Stage Media. He coaches and equips executives, leaders, and influencers to rock the stage by learning savvy, media-rich skills while hosting unforgettable events and shows like he's doing for us here today. He's a broadcast veteran, a creator, and host of show, keynote speaker, media expert, MC, producer, and master interviewer on radio and TV for many years, over, shall we say, 30 years. Rich, you don't look older than 30. Really amazing.
It's actually 36. We just recounted it up, and I was like 36. Wow, time goes by.
Well, hey, you know what? The reason that I bring this up, this topic today, and thank you for helping me bring this to fruition. We're going to bring our guests in just a second because I want everybody to meet them and have as much time with them as possible. But this topic of love and business seems so important to me because what I've seen, especially since I've started working with groups, is particularly, and I'm going to say particularly, I think the women are what I get to view more often, but I see them come in and I see them struggling with the idea of growing their business and keeping a healthy love relationship going. So I have seen women who are divorced temporarily get rocked because their identity seems to be lost. And so they think I have to rebrand, or I'm going to quit my business, or I don't know who I am. And that gets in the way of business. I see single working women that are very successful that have trouble connecting and dating, and they can't seem to find the right guy. And then there's women that are building their business and their significant other just kind of really isn't on board for various reasons, right? It could be that they find it threatening. It could be that they're spending too much time in their business, which I'm sure we're going to talk about when we talk about entrepreneurs and building their business and which do they pay attention to. So I see this struggle going on all the time, particularly with the women that I work with. But I have guy friends that go through the same thing too. And they'll go on vacation and then they'll leave vacation early, or maybe they'll never get to vacation with their family because something happened with the business. And so they don't do something that they had planned for their family, which was really important. And so every time that something drags on the love strings, it's going to affect your potential to work in your highest capacity. So I think this is actually really important. I think that emotional support for growing a business is really, really crucial. I mean, Rich, what do you think? You've been in and out of relationships while you're building your business?
Yes, I have. Well, and again, it's very interesting because I think there also is a stereotype or a mindset that's been put out there. To succeed, you must push it to the limit. And push it to the limit implies other things have got to go, including family, including your love life, including the balance of going to a baseball game and just having fun and not worrying. Whatever that thing is, there's that implied thing of you have to always go for your business. And I think through pandemic, especially this conversation of, can I have the balanced life? Can I have the great business and a great family and a great love life and a great and great? They keep adding on more ands. And I think people are realizing it's okay to throttle back. My business is not going to crash. The world's not going to end. And I think people during pandemic found I like the slower pace.
Yes, but I also know people that have stepped it up now that the pandemic is officially over, and they're doubling down. Yes. They're doubling down on their time. And so we see the opposite happening. So I guess it depends on which camp you're coming from as to why you might be interested in what our experts are about to say today. They have two very different perspectives, but they're both amazing in their history of working with love and couples. And let me just get them up here, shall we? All right. Anneli Driessen is a doctor. She's the founder and CEO of International Metaphysical Academy in Victoria, British Columbia, which she established 13 years ago. Anneli is a C-level master certified coach, a metaphysical consultant, clinical counselor, spiritual healer, ordained metaphysical minister, author, and scholar of metaphysics and practice philosophy for over 35 years. She's published many articles and lectures on spiritually related matters. Her book, Spiritually Based Leadership, 7 Keys, is something that she's very proud of. And now, previous to this, Anneli spent many years as a counselor for couples. We were talking off air about the differences between men and women, and that's what intrigued us both to do this topic here today. So please welcome Anneli.
Thank you very much. Wow, what an introduction. Now I'm getting nervous. But
nerves are good. Don't worry about that.
You guys covered so many things already in your preamble that there is really not that much left.
Oh, we've got so much left.
The changes, the situation, and what's going on now, and the multiplicity of all the demands and really different perspectives on life and business and love is something that really addresses many people right now, at least in my conversations. So it's a very, very timely subject.
Yes. Let's get another perspective in here, shall we? Let's bring in Barry. Barry Selby is a relationship expert, best-selling author, inspirational speaker, and spiritual guide. He is dedicated to helping strong, successful individuals attract a healthy relationship with their authentic and passionate partner. As an expert coaching guide for singles seeking relationships and self-love, Barry is affectionately known as the Love Doctor to his friends and clients. His #1 best-selling book, 50 Ways to Love Your Lover, helps singles and couples embody principal powers for passionate and richly rewarding relationships. So let's bring in Barry, our other expert. Yay! Now we have a full room. I'm so excited.
Barry, I got to ask you, is there Paul Simon playing in your head every time people read that title? 50 Ways to Leave Your Lover? Come on, man. You got to go there, don't you?
That's how the book title came about. I thought, well, I got to fix what Paul Simon broke.
Oh, there you go.
Love it.
I'd love to have you meet Paul one of these days. That would be an interesting conversation. So let's jump into this, shall we? My first question for both of you, and I don't care who goes first. You guys, Anneli or Barry, whoever wants to jump in. I want you to, this is a big question. What is love?
Oh my gosh. This is just as complex as saying who is God and what's consciousness and all that. I mean, there are so many definitions on love. It is unbelievable. It's probably the most written and thought about subject in this world. So what's your thought, Barry?
Oh, nice. You sort of set me up and then thank you.
Of course. I'm interested in your book. My God, I'm happily married. I'm still a newlywed. So I need to know a lot more about what you know about.
Well, love, as you said, absolutely is one of those ineffable things that you try to describe, and it has 17,000 meanings. But I think some elements of love and let me try from this angle. Sorry, I'm just running through what I want to say. The challenge with love is that a lot of people look for love outside themselves because we think that when we find the person in the right place, we'll feel loved. And what most people don't do is actually look in, because love to me is an internal process that we fill ourselves up with love. In fact, one of my teachers says that we can only love somebody else by the amount of love we have for ourselves, which sounds really counterintuitive. But ultimately, love is something that we can self-generate. It's also something that we can use any relationship, not just romantic. I mean, you can have love for your business too. So in a simple way, you can actually change the title, say, who needs love in their business? Because the truth is that when you have passion and joy, that's part of what love is as well. So there's a lot of pieces, and I'm only giving it just a drop in the bucket. So back to you.
This is a month that we're talking about love. It seems almost nonstop, right? With Valentine's Day and I learned that particularly men, I will say it's probably men spending the most, but last year in America alone, over 23 billion. Is that possible?
Yes.
No.
Yes, it is.
Spent on Valentine's Day.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's crazy. But that's appealing to that external love in a lot of ways, right? But it's also, I think it's beautiful. It ties in exactly what you said. It's what everybody wants. It's so hard to define, Anneli, as you mentioned. But when you mentioned something, Barry, about love for ourselves being the level of capacity that we can love other people. So when I mention entrepreneurs, there's something there that I heard somebody say recently, entrepreneurs put the love for themselves in another, they shove it aside. Like Rich was saying, I'm going to, devote everything. And I say, it's almost like you feel like you have to sacrifice everything in order to build that business. And that self-love kind of goes out the window for some reason. Do you see that as part of an issue as far as keeping healthy relationships?
Well, I'm gonna recap a couple of things first. My pet peeve of Valentine's Day is it's one day a year. And people think that they can do all their big gifts on one day and then ignore the part of the rest of the year. No, you could do it every day, frankly. Okay, back to your question. There's the thing, I've been studying the masculine and feminine polarity for 16, 17 years now, because I didn't understand what it was before, and I messed up my relationships because I didn't know who I was in that role. The masculine energy is more single focused. One of the gifts of masculine energy, generally in men, so I want to qualify this. Masculine energy and men are not one-to-one. There are women who are masculine as well, and there are men who are masculine. And same as there are men who are feminine and women who are feminine, independent of sex preference, just to be clarifying that one. Okay, so the challenge is that the masculine energy, because it is single focused, if a man is in the energy, then their business is the only thing they can see. So a relationship will tend to fall to the side. Their family might fall to the side. Or if the relationship is first, their business may not be effectively running. It's almost like trying to spin plates. You can only focus on one at a time, it feels like. Now, the feminine energy, one of the gifts of the feminine is to be able to multitask more easily. And so when a woman is feminine, or a man is feminine, he can focus on multiple things at once fairly well. The challenge, though, is that business and relationship are such big pieces of the puzzle that it can be hard to juggle or manage both of them in an easy way. So it takes practice to do that. And so for us men, especially, we have to almost be reminded, because we forget, because we get single focused, like blinkers on. Oh, I need to take care of my partner. So ladies, remember, your partner isn't ignoring you. He just doesn't know how to remember to keep in touch with you, So it requires partnership that way. For women, and I've seen this happen over the last 15 years, especially, a lot of women in business have put on the masculine headset, so to speak. They become like linear focused because that's what they see the business world being done with. Feminine business, still, unfortunately, women tend to lead their businesses from a masculine energetic, which is that single focus again, which is why sometimes relationships in business don't fit together very well. I know it's a big piece to chew on there.
It is. Anneli, what are your thoughts on this?
Well, you touched on what is something that is part or has been part a lot of my counseling work, and that is to help people understand that fundamentally we are different. Women and men are different, and there is everything in between too. And I know this could trigger a lot of controversy, but respond to problems differently as women. And the more we educate each other about who we are and how we operate, the more we can experience love, not just for ourselves, but also for our partner. I remember when I married my husband, Bill, I learned more in those few years about men than I ever knew. Because I think, first of all, I just knew a little bit theoretically, but then observing each other and how differently we respond to issues is quite amazing. And sometimes I sit there and just roll my eyes and say, what kind of creature did I marry? And he does the same thing, so, exactly. But, the thing is that there needs to be a sense of humility as well, to be open to that we are not totally right with the way how we do things, perhaps, and then just ask questions. And as you mentioned earlier, Sandra Dee, I have a metaphysical academy, and we spend a whole day just on love and sex and everything in between, including pornography, including what's it called? No, I'm blank. Prostitution and sex workers and all this kind of stuff. And we talk about the great love, the big love, the true love between people. And I was thinking I would share with you a very short definition that I asked the spiritual world how they could best summarize what love is all about. And I'm going to share it with you. It's really short. I asked, what is the law of love? And what was transmitted to us, the law of love is quite simple. It is trusting and respecting the other person while holding him or her in high regard. These two principles form the base of love, out of which hundreds of other small things will result. And I think about that a lot. And, when I'm sort of a little miffed with my husband, I'm saying, Anneli, do you hold him in high regard? No, And then I go through these questions, do I accept him the way he is? No, not right now, But when I spend a little bit of time and think it through, I really do hold him in highest regard. And he is an absolutely beautiful individual. And leading back into the subject of today about work, when my partner knows that I have something that makes the world just a little bit better, much easier to be supported, but also vice versa. So if we have a partner whose true mission we know while they're working really hard and can go on the vacations and can spend money on things that maybe they would rather otherwise do, there is a way of support and love that comes from a bigger place. And that is something I would always like to encourage people to discover and to pay attention to.
Rich, you have something that you want to ask. You've
Oh,
been sitting
yeah,
over
no.
there.
I mean, these guys are teeing it up so fun, and I've already got a bazillion questions in my head too. But love is a choice, and I think part of the collision is like with Valentine's Day. It's almost forced upon us. You will go buy flowers tonight. You will go buy a card. You will, and I'm thinking, I thought love was a choice. Hallmark turned it into a major corporate thing.
Yeah.
And for some of us, we do kind of repel. You're not going to make me buy that just because you said it's Valentine's Day. Honey, I do love you, but no, you get no flowers. There's that mindset in
Or
there.
she can get them the next day when they're 50% off.
Right. I love you just as much, but I'm saving us money, honey. See how much I love you? There's that whole idea. But then I'm also thinking of who needs love in business. We're talking so far, which I think it's very important, about the husband and wife, the dating relationship. We're talking about that. What about love in business with your employees, with your team, the respect?
Mm-hmm.
Is it okay, instead of be the curmudgeon-y CEO, is it okay to show love to your staff and your team and really let them know you guys are killing it? You guys are great.
Let's go
You're the
there.
best people in the world.
Yeah, absolutely. With the research I've done and the high-level coaching I have done for about 10 years, that is such a key difference that people can make that are in leadership, to show their staff, to show themselves, but as a model too, that it's important to express love in different ways. Everyone feels and everyone knows it. And everyone, though, does not know how to show it or connect with that part of their mission that incorporates love. And that is a very important aspect that coaches can do. And that gets us through all the difficulties. Again, it's very difficult to define the term love, as I mentioned earlier. And so sometimes we sort of dabble and try to figure it out. But it's a quest that we have individually to get involved with and to discover. And as love, as I mentioned earlier, is such a huge subject, which we only can access in small pieces, in my understanding, we have to experiment a little bit with it, and have some feedback. What does it feel like? What results does it bring? Am I on the right track? Is it really truly altruistic love, or does it have agendas? So that there are all these facets and all these aspects to it. And I always encourage everyone to either do some journaling or to have a good conversation partner, to do some regular inner exploration, inner work, inner questioning, and really do the best we can. I suspect that the issue of unconditional love may not be possible while we are in human beings, in human bodies. Maybe it's possible with very, very few people and in small portions, but the entirety of unconditional, I'm not sure if that is actually possible.
We just do the best we can.
Mm-hmm.
Barry, what are your thoughts on showing love in some form to your workplace?
Well, to take what Anneli said, which is a beautiful, that spiritual definition in terms of trust and having high regard. I think the two things you said that stuck with me is bringing trust to your employees and to your customers, and high regard to them as well. For me, is what really makes business fulfilling. If your customers are like the enemy, or your employees are just peons you've got to work with, that's not respectful. It's not loving. It's not kind or trusting. And I think there's a book by Greenfield called Servant Leadership. And the idea about you lead your audience by serving them. You lead your company by serving the employees. If you have a big company, that's a key fundamental way of local loving as well. Or if you're only an entrepreneur, if you're just an entrepreneur individually running a business, oftentimes we have challenges with our VA or or people we hire in to do stuff, our web designer, or somebody's going to get us clients, or one of our referrals. And if we can bring love, so to speak, into all of that, I mean, I talk about it being like a lubricant in a way. It smooths the way. It makes communication easier. It makes ownership of your own stuff easier, so you don't keep blaming other people for things that you need to own for yourself. So love can be a very useful tool when it's used in service to upliftment, for connection, and for greater success.
Is there a parallel in the ways that people may be working on their love relationship outside of work and being able to keep that same, well, we just said that love and respect and the building of trust, and carry that into workplace? Because as you know, it is difficult sometimes to look at your workplace and think love here, but as you're learning one, can you not parallel it to the other?
I think you must. If you're really authentic, then there is an alignment everywhere where you show up, even when you stand in line in a grocery shop, the way how you graciously thank someone or make a compliment, a genuine compliment, something is there present all the time. There is no separation. I remember I counseled once a CEO in, I think he was in Minneapolis, and he was high up in his particular church, and he told me that, oh, well, that happens at church. I do this, but not in business. And so that there is a separation was just so shocking to me. And it was shocking to him because he had never thought about it, that the same principles that he teaches actually as a church leader would apply in business. He was in sales, in sales training. And I was just so dumbfounded by this experience. And so we had some very interesting conversations about that. So a short answer to your question, if we are for real, if we are who we truly are, we are like that in every aspect of life. And there is definitely a connection, better than connection is an alignment with who we are in business and who we are at home.
So I want to jump on that for 1 second, because that's a great, the church to work environment, being a former pastor myself, being in the business world, I think we have to make a distinction in our businesses. People talk about mission and vision. I talk about values. Should we not put into our businesses, one of the values is we will love and respect each other, and literally talk about that as part of the DNA. So it's not an afterthought, Anneli, just like you were saying. It's like, well, we can't cross over from here to here. Yeah. Whoever said we couldn't cross over from here to here? We've kind of put that in there. But I think of as business leaders, entrepreneurs, especially entrepreneurs, if you're launching a company, write down your values, and love and respect probably should be a pretty good foundational one, I would think.
There's something that came to mind as you were saying, where somebody asked, where did we get the idea that we couldn't have both? And my thought was social media and all the exterior influences and comparisons that we have. I think if you look at that, it basically, we're being fed the fact that we can't have, number one, we can't have a loving relationship and a successful growing business at the same time. And that love doesn't necessarily have to be in the workplace. I think it's an old-fashioned way of looking at business, but I think that it still exists. How much do you think social media affects our ability to take on this loving approach to everything that we do?
Well, I would jump in on that. First of all, say social media has been the best place to feel unworthy.
Ooh.
Because we go on social media and we always, unfortunately, find someone who's got a better relationship, better looking, nicer house, more success, because that's what everybody does on social media. They boast about what they have, it seems to be, for other people. I'm thankful I have friends on Facebook who are more authentic. But in a lot of social media platforms, especially I would say TikTok and Instagram.
Yes. Oh.
Because it's a very visual platform. It really portrays image. so if you're looking through and scrolling through and looking at that, most of us, I suspect, maybe not honestly, but underneath it, we look at ourselves and go, I'm not that. I'm not as good as that, or I don't have what that is. So we come up short in a way.
Yes.
Well,
Want to say something?
well, and it's almost a competition, right? How many fans, how many followers, how many friends, right? We start looking and comparing when it was never designed that way. I think we've turned it in that way. Instead, it should be free flowing, good information, loving, encouraging posts, equipping people, doing things that are in a positive way. But I think mentally, as we post, we're like, I wonder if so-and-so has this idea today. Like I had this idea. And we get to a competition instead of just being authentic.
Well, let me take out that circuit for a second, which is that we have a pandemic in the way of depression in the country. And I would think a lot of that depression is based on social media, because we do have that feeling of like we didn't get enough likes that somebody else did. You know, my post didn't hit, didn't get response. People didn't see stuff. And we take it personally. It's an app in a phone. It's this little thing on your phone screen, but yet it overwhelms our life. So to come back to what we said at the beginning about love, when we start loving ourselves, when we start putting ourselves first, what happens on our phone doesn't bother us as much. So same as business, same as relationships. When we put love into ourselves, one of the key words as well about this is equanimity. When we understand that we are in balance, when we have a homeostasis, so to speak, when we love ourselves enough, what happens around us doesn't control us. I do a lot of work with codependency with my clients. And one of the problems we face, I should say we deal with, is we go, well, you did this to me. I'm upset because you did that. It's like, no, you got upset while they did that. When you start to disengage those rules, those beliefs and head outward, we can start saying, you know what, I can love myself anyway. What happened out there, happened out there. How I deal with it, up to me. You know, one of my teachers said, you know, how you relate to issue is the issue.
So let me ask this question to everybody. Has social media become a version of love where we're filling our cup through the likes, the fans, the followers? Are we now using it as a gauge of, I am loved so much by all my fans?
Oh, that's a scary thought.
I'm just asking.
Yeah, no, I can't relate any of what you're talking about. I make a point to have posts that are lifting up people, that are inspirational. And if they take it or use it, that's great. But I don't really check what other people are doing.
I think that's healthier.
Maybe I'm guilty of that, but I do dismiss, so I must say, people who just, where I see it's like an AI inquiry about getting business. I never respond to those, you know, unless it's a personal call or a personal inquiry. But I don't really recognize all of that because I don't pay attention. I'm really sorry to say I'm not an expert in giving proper.
You're an advantage because you're ignoring it.
Sorry, what did you say? I didn't hear you.
What, Barry?
You actually have a curve because you're not responding to it. You're not caught up in it. You're actually putting it out there and going, that's fine. That's actually probably the healthiest way of doing it.
Oh,
I think it is. There are studies that show, especially when they're researching younger people, high school and even younger, and noticing how their mood changes within a few seconds. And I saw something just the other day that a friend posted that said 3 minutes, just 3 minutes of basically negative angled news, which is news, right? I mean, all of our news, if you turn on a news broadcast, is going to be sort of negative laden. 3 minutes of that will cause a 27% drop in your mood.
Yeah.
Now, how ambiguous is that, you know, that measurement? I don't know. But the point is, like, it certainly feels that way to me. It definitely feels that way to me. So it's that conscious effort to maybe turn off the computer when you go to dinner with your significant other or anybody, go to lunch even, put the phone down and not just, and we talk about this at my retreats too, not just setting it down, but actually, and not just turning it upside down, but actually removing it.
Yeah.
Well,
go ahead.
No, Anneli, go.
No, you just raised a really good point, Sandra Dee. about being very mindful about how much individually we can handle of all the negative stuff that's going on. I know that my husband has a much larger capacity to deal with negative news than I do. So I ask him usually in the evenings, just give me a summary, but also add some good news. Unfortunately, he often says there is not much good news, but I know that I'm very affected by it when I do watch the news. I mean, I'm not saying, I'm blind to this, but I'm very much aware how it affects me physically and psychically. And so I need to monitor that, and I need to really make sure that I also spend time to look at some of the good things that are happening in this world. And there are many good sources out there, and many of them are things like what you are doing here, Sandra Dee, to bring people together, to think, to reflect, to look at some ways in how to make our life a little bit better. And so there are many, many initiatives of people that, of course, don't show up on the media, or not that easily. And so we have to look for them, we have to create them, and really be aware how much we individually can handle. It's highly individual. And what we need to maintain is that sense of self-respect and self-love and self-honor, that you implied earlier, Barry, that we need to nurture. And it is a job, as is a relationship. We often think, when I'm a minister, so I have facilitated a few weddings, and of course, weddings are always a highlight in people's lives. But really, a job starts. It's like a business. You have the same criteria, not the same, but many of the same criteria in a relationship than you have in business. And so it's an added, even though absolutely wonderful gift to have a loving partner, but it's also a huge responsibility, and it's an opportunity to really reflect on my own love for myself and the world. It's an added dimension for more maturity and more spiritual growth. That's how I see the possibility of being or having a partner, whether you're formally married or not. But if you have a committed partner, male or female, doesn't matter, same principles apply in my mind. It's a big job, and it's a huge commitment to oneself to be in a relationship with someone else.
So Anneli, you went right to a question that Sandra and I had put on our list for today. How important is that business and spousal, that love relation? Because you're right, we hear it with our business, and we come home, we go on a date, we do whatever. But how important is it to have that person at least partly connected to you in the business, partly aware of your pains, your highs, your lows? How important is that version of love to the business?
It's really extremely important and valuable. Bill, I talk about my husband again, he must be very close to me, but if he would not know and have bought into what the bigger goal is with the Metaphysical Academy, it would be almost impossible to have a healthy relationship, because it is so demanding. It's really who I am 24/7. So it is a high level of integration. And so part of loving me is also loving what I do. So it is that closely connected. And so, yes, it's important, and the values need to be shared. Now, if you have a totally different business, then I know, Sandra Dee, your husband does something radically different from you. But still, if you connect into a deeper purpose for why you do what you do, and how you make the world a little bit better, that makes all the difference.
And I know Barry's agreeing with you. I see him nodding his head. And for those that don't know, my husband is a stuntman. So, I mean, similar in some ways. We met when I was an actress and he was a stuntman. So we have some understanding. I think that's an awesome thing, because that industry is really bizarre in how much it asks of you when you're working. And I have an understanding of that. And I think looking at values, I can do the same thing. I mean, I know for him what he needs to make himself happy, and whether he's doing that when he's not doing stunts, he's doing some other radical volunteer work that makes my stomach turn, things like swiftwater rescue and wildfire rescue, and stuff that just makes me kind of go, okay. But I know that's what he needs. And so it's that understanding of what he values and what lights him up, And Barry, I saw you shaking your head as she was saying these things about having the support.
Absolutely. I mean, frankly, when you come home, that's the one thing you really want is your partner to go, how are you? Wants to check in with you, wants to feel like that and be resigned that you're doing something totally separate.
Mhm.
Speaks just with self-exposure, so to speak. I've been single now for 16 years. I'm a relationship coach who's single, just to be clear. The thing is, that also means that when I go out with friends, I've got to be really careful to keep boundaries with them. Because with friends, they may ask you for my advice, and I'm like, unless you're going to hire me, I don't want to give you advice, because then it's crossing that line.
Yes.
But also, when I go on dates, I'm really clear about boundaries. Because the thing is, for me, is that I've said this before. It's like I want to be with somebody who's done their work too, because I've been on this path for almost 40 years, and to have somebody who I meet who's never done any work, we won't even connect on any level. So the idea about relationship and business, same thing applies, is having your partner be aware of, like Anneli was saying, be aware of what you're doing, so they can at least have a sense of heart for what you're up to, compassion for what you're doing, some care that you take care of yourself as well. Because one of the jobs I would suggest, or one of the recommendations of a partner, is to be very clear that when your partner comes home from their big job, is are they taking care of themselves? That, again, back to the loving. Can they be a reminder, not necessarily that they take care of you, because it's not meant to be that enmeshed, but the fact that they make sure that they don't put pressure on you, like they give you some space too. You have that respect for each other, especially if you both have big jobs. When you come home, one of the biggest challenges is, how do you disengage? How do you recharge? How do you restore? It's collaborative. That's one of the key things in relationships too.
Restore. That might lead into what I was going to ask Ness. I was going to give you both of our experts a scenario. And it's a scenario that at least one of my clients has had, actually, in theory, more than one. But working with someone that's female, who was rebranding and pivoting her business, which required a lot of attention. And another was at a point where her business was growing and had the potential of growing exponentially. And she found herself struggling. And actually she said, well, I'm depressed, I'm lacking motivation. And when it came down to it, I said, who's your support team? Like, how is your husband with this? And both of them said their significant others were not supportive at all. And in fact, were pulling away from them at the same time that they're trying to build something. What advice would you give to those partners who feel that distancing happening at home and all they really want is very what you said, to have that support whenever they do have the time for their significant other? Advice?
You want to go first?
Go ahead. Well, I would definitely advise to really seek some counseling, because it's a very, very small investment in comparison what a divorce would cost. And not only the financial part, but the pain, the loneliness that is part of that, the frustration, the disappointment, all those negative things that go along with it. It's just not worth it. You know, I sometimes say, if you spend $2,000 or even $3,000 or maybe even $5,000 with someone who's really going to help you, and even if it's just one consultation, you know, it's definitely worth an investment.
Anneli, how do you find those? How do you find that person? Because it's such a personal thing, and you've got two people now. So I've been in therapy before, and I've had some I really clicked with and some I didn't. So if you have two people, how do you find the person that's going to be a good counselor for you?
Very good question. There are some guidelines that you can look at online. There are some criteria that you can think through, see if it's a match. You can also look into, and I think it's really online, or getting a referral from someone you trust who has experience. I mean, there are ways to doing that. That's not that complicated. But also trust your judgment, your own intuition on that, if you are really a fit. If that person comes across as knowledgeable and experienced and authentic and all that, and that really makes a big difference. But it's really worth it. So if you're not happy with your first round of person, interview 2-3 others, you know, and stick with those that you feel can help you. One of the biggest issues that I have come across, that is often one partner is ready to have counseling and the other one isn't. Usually it's the male who is not interested in counseling. There's something about ego, about, I don't, maybe a bunch of things, but that's very different. And what I always recommend is then see those counselors individually first and see if you click. And the agenda is, see if this counselor or consultant or coach can help you to help your partner or your spouse. it's a different angle of approaching it to make it a bit easier to make that connection. But I tell you, it's really a worthwhile thing to do. I know from my background that a number of people said, not only did we get our issues resolved, but our relation is far superior now than it has ever been. And that is something to look forward to. And I'm sure, Barry, with your work, you would have similar experiences. We don't do that because as counselors and therapists, because we have nothing else to do. We do that because we know it works. And we know it is
Indeed.
it is worthwhile, and it is of a much bigger game than one thinks. If people are genuinely happy, I mean, what a contribution to give to everyone else around them, right?
Yes.
So it is much bigger than just the two of you or the two of us. It is something that touches everyone's life. And if you have children, then of course that's a whole other thing that is important.
Yeah. And the people you work with, which is why we started this whole topic in the first place. Barry, what were you going to say? Because I saw you nodding your head and agreeing. And I had to laugh because on my screen, we have the girls on this side and the boys on this side. And when she said the guys have a problem with counseling, we're laughing. So I thought that was the left side of the screen.
Well, let me first speak to what you said at the beginning about when a woman's going through business transformation and her partner's pulling away, that scenario.
Yes.
Oftentimes what that's caused by is because he's not feeling his needs are being met because she's so busy. And so he's taking it like it's me or the business. That's all what's going through his head.
Yes.
Rather than inquiring, how are you doing? What's happening? Because the other part is what we don't do as men, just to be unfortunate and exposing us, is that we don't oftentimes learn or inquire about our partners. We assume a lot of things. This is one of the challenges. We have to actually stretch beyond our own head and go, what is she thinking? What's going on there? So when we can be that compassionate space, which for men is work, I know, to understand what's going on, to basically be her, because what you said earlier, it's transformational. And the other part I want to jump over to for a second is that thing about men being less willing to jump into therapy and stuff like that. That's because we were raised that way. We are told as kids, and there's tons of documentation about this out in the world. There's a movie about it called The Masks We Wear, that we are trained when we're young to man up, don't cry, boys don't cry, don't be a sissy, tough it out. So when it becomes an adult, going to see therapy is the antithesis of that for us. We don't look at seeking help as a win. We think we've failed somehow.
Absolutely, yes.
Men, we would rather say, I'll tough it out, I'll be manly, which is why so many men unfortunately go through depression and why a lot of male suicide is we don't seek help because we think it's a weakness to do so. Frankly, I would suggest for a man who asks for help, it's a strengthening activity.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Well, that's even compounded.
Female, I think it's attractive to me to have a guy that says, yes, I'm willing to work on this. One of the most amazing things.
Say that louder.
Say that louder. I think it's sexy. My husband had been married before, and when we had our first couple of arguments, he said, "Here's something that I learned in counseling," and I was like, "Cool, okay, that means he's more involved than I expected." But it was awesome because he showed up with tools, and the fact that he was willing to understand and use them and take them, I think it's an attractive thing. I saw you jumping in, wanting to.
No, I was just going to add to that. There's also a generational thing that Barry's describing here too, because Barry, we're probably close to the same Chrome Dome age. But there is something that came from my father's father to him that came to us of that. Again, the shields up. We're not going in. We had the Clint Eastwood, the big boys don't cry. We had all that, and it was modeled, but not from one generation. It was like multi-layers of generation. Yes. So when my dad literally used the newspaper, it was his barrier that he put up, and you don't disturb Dad when he had when that barrier was up. When he literally began to take it down and open up, that was like huge for him. I mean, how many things have we been taught and we didn't even know we were taught? That now we have to go back and fix and repair and unwrap, but we did not know we were taught it, but we were taught that. That's a huge thing, Barry. I think it's a big thing to discuss, but then it does translate into the office. It does translate into how you show love to your coworkers, to your teams and everything else. But you're taught, we just don't do that, guys.
It's a shift, and it requires being a little vulnerable, I would think.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you made a very good point. It's really changing. When I work with younger men, they are generally much more open to work and to explore relationship issues and to explore the differences between men and women. And they're there, I know that, as I mentioned earlier, there's a bit of controversy on that, but we really are made differently. We respond differently. When we are depressed as women, we show it differently than men. There is so many different ways of expressing ourselves, and the more we learn about it, and it's really also about learning in a therapy context. It's mind-boggling, how we give hints to men, and they don't pick it up, they don't get it, and I mean, it's just so many stories that we have where men are in some ways so simple. I go up with men. Right. And so I go up with men. My father had a small business, so he was a roofer and plumber. So I go up with about 20, 25 men. So I found it much more easy, actually, to deal with men than to deal with women, because my mother was a bit of a problem and was a bit neurotic. And so I related from early on better to men than to women, because it was it was easier, it was.
Yes.
But it's a whole different subject, actually, to talk about these male and female differences, and it's very exciting, and it pushes some buttons. I know that.
Oh, yeah.
I have a question regarding that, the male-female difference. And what I've seen is, like, Barry, listening to you talk about generations of men being taught to behave in a certain way. And, really, it's rather recent that women have decided to say, well, I want what I deserve to have. And the pendulum has swung, I think, to the point where women are putting on their masculine hat to go into work.
Yep.
And sometimes having a hard time taking it off, because that's what I seem to be seeing. And so I want to get your take on this, because I have women that single is a good scenario. It's just a single woman who is successful and having trouble dating. And her belief is, and this is her belief, so maybe she's manifesting it herself, but her belief is when men meet her and realize that she doesn't need them to pay for her car, her home, or anything, that she is self-sufficient and well off, she says she feels that they're intimidated. Is that something that she is projecting, or is it a case of a woman who hasn't taken off a masculine hat?
It could be either, because both men, and the thing is that in the dating arena, it's still it's interesting. We're in two places at once. There's the old-fashioned way of doing it, where the man leads and takes charge and runs the show and has more of everything for the woman to be taken care of. At the same time, there are a lot of women come through, as you mentioned, who are successful, who are self-caring. They take themselves, right, all the house, everything else. I mean, I think it was 1971 when women got credit cards for the first time.
Right.
So
it's very recent. These changes. Yeah.
I mean, the evolution of women from the 50s to now, if women actually looked at where they come from, you would see the difference in the transformation. And the challenge is, frankly, that women have worked, frankly, very hard to get to where they are. And men, again, very careful to say this, generally haven't learned to honor and respect that. women are still looked at by a lot of men as not being the equals. Women need equality from men, frankly. And so a lot of women, when they're single and are doing very well, look at men who, because we are competitive beings, who want to either knock down the woman's success, who don't respect it, or who basically resent it because she's doing better than he is, or as well as he is. So he feels like he can't do what he's supposed to do, which is take care of her because she doesn't need me. So a lot of these things play into the conversation that men go through in their heads that may not come out public verbally, but that's that wall that men don't cross. So a man to be with a woman who's very successful, first of all, he's going to know it's not his ego at risk, because that's the other part for us. But the other part as well is that he's got to be very clear that he's not trying to take anything from her, because women oftentimes feel like they've built the success, but they're worried it might get knocked down by somebody.
Well, it comes down to personal maturity again, and willingness to learn about who we are as different genders, and in embracing that. I worked with a number of women in the past to discover what femininity means to them, to help see, how can we be more fully women without feeling less or better or whatever, and really getting back to our roots and our strengths that we have intrinsically. And they really are about nurturing. We multitask differently. We oftentimes have more intuitive abilities. Not always, but there are a number of criteria that are just a fact. And why not strengthening those and acknowledging those? And the same with males. Like, usually men do want to provide. They have a big need to protect, like to protect the family, to get out and hunt. Right? We are the gatherers. We like to make things nice. We want to make a nice home. It needs to be warm. I know it sounds like cliche, but really it's true. It's
Yeah.
really true. I've been in this business for over 40 years, and I have not seen any contradictions, unless someone is really, really, really disturbed or differently orientated. As we know, there are different, people with different midbrains and different functions. And and that happens, and that's also part of nature to some degree. But it's very, very exciting for me to see that there is an evolution happening right now, that women are more interested in rediscovering their inner strengths, and men are doing the same thing. They become men again and not become wishy-washy guys who just kind of hang around. Women want strong males. I know that, believe me. I mean, I have had a lot of exposure to folks over the years, and it is actually a very good development that I see.
I'm cheering that over here.
Yeah.
So Sandra, we're getting close to the end of our time, and I'm curious if we could ask our two experts to maybe, instead of problem solving, give us some tips on how to make it be better in this work, business, love relationship. Would that be okay if we get some concrete tips here?
Yeah, I would like to share something. I looked up, I did a little bit of research before our meeting today, and I had some discussions with some people on this, and I came across a short quote from Voltaire. You probably know Voltaire. He was a French philosopher and a bit of a sneaker. He was in jail a few times because he really provoked a lot of people. But he wrote something about work, because that's a subject today, and I'm just sharing it as an end for reflection. He wrote, "Work saves us from 3 great evils: boredom, vice, and need." And if I really reflect on that, there's just a huge amount of stuff in there. So business work is something that's very healthy, that's very wholesome, and that keeps the world going. So these would be my completing comments. And thank you so much for having me on your panel today.
Oh, it's been so fun. Barry, how about you?
I don't have any quotes handy or great poets to read from, sorry, but I will say a couple of things.
Give us a Barry quote. Give us the Barry quote.
Yeah.
Well, one of the biggest lessons I've been learning and teaching and working for a long time is don't take things personally. And in relationship, like you were saying earlier about women in the very successful business, they wonder why their man's pulling back, is inquiry, asking, finding out what's really going on, because we don't often do that. We make assumptions and we blame, get in this place of resentment when nothing actually happened, or at least nothing that really affected us does. So if we can take the time to stop and to go, hang on a second, I'm feeling off. What's going on here? What am I thinking about them that may not be true? Can I check my partner? If you do those simple steps, I mean, this is not just about business, but every part of a relationship.
Yes.
Yeah.
If you do those simple steps, you'd be amazed how much your relationship can improve.
That's a whole nother hour-long conversation, Barry. That one statement right there, you just blew up the can all over again.
I know. I was watching your face, Rich. You were like, oh man.
You did ask.
But so true. So true. This has been amazing. I want to thank you both. And, since we have another minute or two here, do either of you want to share anything you have coming up that if folks are watching, they want to follow you? Rich has been great in putting up the contacts for you guys and your websites. But is there anything coming up that you want to share?
Well, actually, I have a new program that I've been developing for quite a while now that's launching shortly, which is basically called Love After Heartbreak, because most of my single clients have not always done the work to heal that heartbreak. So if anybody's interested in finding out, I've got a wait list right now. I don't have it launched, but I have a wait list on my website, which is my name, barryselby.com/loveafter. You can just sign up there and I'll get in touch with you and recommend more information and how we can work together. So that's my big news coming up.
Also, if you hit the QR code right now, that's Barry's code right there. Hit that, learn more about Barry. Boom. You'll be able to connect deeper with him. So please grab that. Anneli?
Well, thank you. As you know or may know, that what I live and breathe is the content of the Metaphysical Academy. It's a most comprehensive 5-year study for people who are really serious to acquire knowledge. It's not just a feel-good spiritual entertainment kind of deal. It actually saves people's lives. And for any leader, for any parent, for anyone who influences anyone, which is pretty much most people, we need to find ways to help survive. And this was an insight that I just had fairly recently. It's much more than knowing more and being better and all that. What we're heading for now is huge. And we need to have the skills and the consciousness and the awareness and knowledge to get through that really well. And love is the key drive for all of that.
So true. So true. So true. Thank you so much. And I'm so grateful to both of you being here. And for, as you alluded just a second ago, we need the light in the world that the both of you bring. So this has been awesome, and it's been an honor to have you here and share your wisdom. And I know some of these things I want to dive so much deeper into with both of you. We can be here all day, but I do encourage people to connect with you. Absolutely, connect with Rich and I. Rich always has things going on. Rich, what's the next thing you have coming up? Throw something out there.
2 p.m. with the Trigger coming up today. I'll be back on the air streaming out, and I'm going to talk about AI and the impact of AI. And that's a whole landmine. So, Barry, if you want to come back and throw more gasoline on the fire, please do. But yeah, we're going to talk about AI and how it impacts now the speaking, the broadcast, our world. Sandra, you're in my world. Definitely will have a shift with AI coming.
Wow.
Awesome. Super excited. And as for me, I know, thank you, Rich, for putting out my website there. Great way to get a hold of me. Find me on social media as well. LinkedIn here, I'm on all the time. So message me here if you have any questions at all. Yes, Rich and I do similar things, but we just want to make sure that we help everybody shine their light like our guest did here today. And if that's you and you have a topic that you want to get out into the world, reach out to Rich, reach out to me. And I'll be doing another panel discussion actually Rich and I are going to be doing this together. In April, we're going to be talking about sustainability in our lives and in business. It's celebrating Earth Day. And I have been an active conservationist and active in protecting wildlife since I was literally 3 years old, and I can prove that. So I'm looking forward to the show in April. For that one, we're going to do a discussion like this, and then we're going to actually move people into a private space where we're going to be sitting with our guests. If you have something special to talk about on that topic, message me here in LinkedIn, send me an email. Smoke signal might not be the best way to go, but I'll look for it anyway. Find me any way you can and let me know what your specialty is, why it's so important for you to talk about this in the month of April around Earth Day. So thank you guys so much for being here. Thank you, Rich. You're the most awesomest producer and co-host.
This is fun, but before we let us go, what was your biggest takeaway today? Because it was great. They were both fantastic. There was so much stuff. What was your biggest takeaway on this?
I took notes. You know, I'm like our friend Francois from our interview series. My wonderful Francois. So I said I took notes, and he's got, I can't keep up with him. He's got pages and pages of notes. But I did take some notes. One of the takeaways was realizing that yes, a healthy love relationship does support. You want it to support your work life, but that you are the same person in both. So however you are loving in your life is the same way you should be loving in your work life. So if there is kindness and trust that you are going for in everything, like Anneli said, when you go to the grocery store, gosh, that was such an eye-opening thing for me. Somebody mentioned that to me years ago about, do you actually see the person that's checking you out? And I mean checking you out with the groceries, not checking you out. But do you see the person that is the checkout person? If they say, how are you? Do you even give them a real answer? Do you look them in the eye? Do you acknowledge that they exist? that right there is kindness and respect for another human being. And I was missing that opportunity. I really was. I was your typical just going through, throwing stuff on the belt, thank you very much, and leaving. I'm like, this person is this is their work. I can make their work a little bit more pleasant by letting them know that I see them and that I appreciate them. And that alone was the first step for me to start to change how I show up. And I'd like to think I'm like that all the time. It's a work in progress. I admit it, but I try to be really kind to people that are doing their job and thank them for it. And the same way, if I have people working for me, I hope that I try every opportunity to thank them for the great job that they're doing.
That's Sandra Dee Robinson. She's the host, the creator of these amazing events from the Unbridled Life. And again, mark your calendar, April 13th. We will be back again to do it all over with a new panel with a lot more fun. Until then, I'm Rich Bontrager, Sandra Dee. Have a great day, everybody.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.